Do you work on the front line of safeguarding with little or no support? Or heard about this buzzword that gets floated around a lot called supervision? Well, today I'm joined by Victoria Morris, and together we'll be sharing our thoughts and experiences of leading safeguarding supervision and why we believe it is so important for not only the well-being and safety of those in your care, but also for you. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Safeguarding Redefined, a podcast by Cornerstone Safeguarding. We'll be exploring a range of topics from child protection to adult safeguarding and everything in between. Please note some of the topics we'll be discussing may be sensitive in nature and may trigger strong emotions.
Welcome to today's episode, Victoria. Thank you so much for joining me. I've been wanting to cover this topic for a very long time because supervision is one of our services that seems to be the most popular, and I think it is so important for anyone working on the front line. Why do you think it's important?
Oh, I'm so glad to hear you say it's a popular service because I think it's essential. Being a designated safeguarding lead in a school can be an incredibly lonely situation with significant responsibility, and supervision gives people that avenue to talk through what it is that they're doing. It acts as a mechanism of CPD, somebody to support and challenge them, but it's also a safe, confidential space to really work through some of the emotions that can be attached to safeguarding. We're not robots, and some of the things that we're dealing with would probably be quite shocking to members of the public to know that we're dealing with safeguarding at that kind of level. And managing those emotions alone is really hard, and we should care about the mental health of our staff. And in supervision, you've got somebody who really gets it and can support, reassure you, guide you in new directions, and really understands and gives you space to have those valid emotions about the work that you're doing.
I think you bring up a really good point there, is that a lot of people would be absolutely shocked with some of the things that we have to deal with on a front line. And the thing from that is that you're not able to really explain everything, are you? You're not allowed to talk to other people about, oh, this is what's going on this morning or anything like that. Sometimes you just have to kind of harbour it silently. And so this is why having someone external to the organisation is really, really helpful. Now, that's my personal opinion, that it should be someone external. What are your thoughts on internal supervision?
So I agree with you that external is extremely important. In our trust, we're a small trust, there was no supervision for a really long time, and I advocated for that to become something that needed to happen. So the way that we operate is that I am lifted out at trust level and I provide supervision to DSLs across the academy, but I'm not heavily involved in those academies or with those people outside of that. So there's a level of separation. We can only do that because we're a trust. On the whole, I think it needs to be external because you have the danger of getting into a groupthink mentality when part of supervision is challenge and challenging thought processes, decisions, biases, things like that. And if there is an overarching internal bias, that can be really problematic if that challenge isn't happening. And I have also seen cases where I've done external supervision where the person I'm supervising has had internal supervision and it hasn't worked because they didn't feel in a safe space to talk about well-being and caseload and workload. And they have come almost to breaking point. And then the organisation that they work for has then reached out for external supervision. And I would argue that that's too late.
I really agree with you with the level of separation, because sometimes it is very difficult to be able to talk to your colleagues or even your boss about things that are really, really personal to you. And especially if you have that worry that if you pass on too much information, they're going to go, oh, it's not the right role for them, or they're always going on about how they're struggling. But this role, you need to be able to say, and be open and honest, because so often we go, oh, we're supporting other people. It's they're the ones that are struggling. I shouldn't be the one that's struggling. But no, I'm going to completely rip that apart in this episode today and say, you can be so open and honest. That's why supervision matters, and that's why it should be someone external. So if someone was going to turn up to a session, a supervision session, what can they expect?
So I always start with a wellbeing check-in, because there's absolutely no point in launching into talking about specific cases and actions if the person is really struggling, feeling overwhelmed, or has a background of feeling like they're not coping or they're about to not be able to cope. So I think that's really important to do a wellbeing check-in. And I try to acknowledge in that very rarely are they just a DSL. They're often a DSL and a head, a DSL and a deputy, a DSL and a pastoral lead, etc., school life. And so it's not always checking in the wellbeing related to their caseload and their safeguarding work. It's generally, how are you doing? And being able to speak honestly about that. If I've worked with them before, I then go back and review any actions from the previous case, get an update. That's often a really nice celebratory thing, because a case that they are very worried about, they've taken action, they've got an update to tell me that some really positive things have happened, and they feel bolstered by the fact, I took action, I did something, and that really made a difference. And then we move on to a case of their choosing that's currently happening. Although I'm quite open to people talking about a case that's done and dusted, but is still niggling them. And they still have concerns about, did I do enough? Did I do the right thing? Is that the right result? Because that supports wellbeing and learning as well. And we work through that. And the purpose of it is me listening to them and guiding them to reflect as they go, and then supporting them maybe with some challenge questions or the questions that we can discuss, and pulling out, what should the actions be next. And I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but my absolute favourite thing is when somebody is talking me through the case and they suddenly go, as I'm explaining it to you, I'm just realising that, or I'm just thinking that, or I'm just wondering, actually, should I? And you think, just that space has already created a thought process that is moving them forward with a case. And I love that.
100%. I really enjoy, I enjoy it when someone can leave the session smiling, or if they can say something really positive and go, oh, actually, that really, really helped me, because it's understandable that they're going to be turning up to the sessions apprehensive, worried, thinking, why on earth do I need to be in this? Also, some of the other things is going, I've got so much work. Why am I going to have to give in like 45 minutes to an hour of my time to it? But 100% of the time, they've been able to leave the sessions going, that was really valuable.
Yeah,
that I really, really love.
I agree. And what was interesting rolling it out in a trust that hadn't done it before was, even though I gave them a policy, I explained what it was and prepared them for what it would be like, showed them the recording templates and everything so they would have a feel. 100% of the DSLs after their first session went, that was more useful than I was expecting. So I don't know what they had been expecting, but they now rely on that as a service, or they have cases, and it's also prompted them to contact me more in between, where they're having niggles and concerns or want clarifications and things, which is a really positive thing. But I absolutely agree with you. It is great when somebody says to you at the end, thank you, I feel so much better. I know what I need to do next. And you just think, well, that was the purpose of it, and I'm really glad.
I would say that actually one of the other surprising things for people is to realise that it doesn't always have to be about safeguarding that we're talking. There are so many elements, and like you said earlier, there are so many roles that they have. And so it's a form of coaching through certain situations, relational issues that they have with their colleagues, how to work through that. Maybe training that they've got coming up, where they even need to have help for prep for a personal course that they're actually going to be attending, or one that they're actually going to be delivering as well. And it helps to have somebody who has worked in safeguarding and delivers training to be able to kind of pass on that information to them, or resources. And one of the other aspects of supervision that I really, really enjoy is that communication between the sessions. So we do a Monday to Friday contact time, as well as they can check in with us and say, look, can you join us for a half an hour? And it's all part of the same package where we can just go through every single concern they've got. And they can redact the information, or they can fill and choose to decide whether to pass the information on to us. And we can just give them tips, help, support with going through with it. And so once people have been for a first few sessions, you can just see them kind of like change from this person who was slightly closed at the first bit of the session, the first one, to suddenly actually it becomes that kind of working relationship as if we work together. And I'll be honest, selfishly, I really enjoy that. I mean, running a business is fun and enjoyable, but at the same time, I do miss certain aspects of working within education. Fortunately, I'm still a DSL for another organisation on a voluntary basis, and so I still keep my foot in the door. But I do miss that kind of rush of the education world or working within another organisation with a team.
And I think it's so helpful because I have a safeguarding role across the trust. Supervision has given me extremely close-up look at the level of complexity that's being dealt with now. And even in the space of the last few months, I would say the complexity has arisen. And so it allows you to understand and have a really good feel for what it is they are dealing with. I mean, this is a level of pressure that I'd say even 5 years ago wasn't the case for school-based DSLs. Yes. And I look back to my own history as a DSL, where certainly I wasn't dealing with this level of complexity 5 years ago, sort of pre-COVID. And I think actually that was really lonely. And supervision, as you've described it, with the checking in between with your service, it's creating community and support, and that has perhaps been a bit lacking for safeguarding leads in the past.
I literally brought this up in training last night. I was taking a safeguarding essentials training for a local charity, and what was lovely, they were all fully engaged. It was a really big group of people, and I came away feeling quite high off the energy that was brought from it. So on one part, it was great because people are really interested in safeguarding now, whereas, like you say, a few years back, it was completely different landscape. But also I was able to kind of say, because I work across different organizations or support different organizations, I'm able to pick up on trends that are happening across different places and go, this is happening elsewhere. Obviously not giving over the details of where I found it out, but this is happening elsewhere. And it helps the DSL kind of go, we're not alone. Yeah. And the fact is that because sometimes it can become a little tiny echo chamber. I know from working in education for years that sometimes you could just get caught up in what is your own establishment. And so having somebody else to talk in and go, this is actually happening elsewhere, it does make them feel a little bit more like, oh, okay, I don't feel like I'm doing such a bad job. Actually, people are experiencing these issues. And then I'm able to pass on, this is what they're doing. And it actually seems to be working really, really well. And just passing on that information.
Yeah, and I think that also tracks with experiences of working under different local authorities who have different ways of managing children's social care. External supervision can be super helpful for that because, again, you become in an echo chamber of, well, this is how this county does it. People, say, in Manchester, would be horrified at that approach. So you can learn quite a lot from external supervision by just hearing some different approaches and expectations because we don't have a level playing field across the whole of the country in terms of safeguarding and child protection.
I think we could talk about that topic for a good few hours because it's one of my bugbears when I go across counties and I'm having to kind of like research quite extensively of going, right, what name do they give it? Who's the contact details? How do they process things? I really, really do hope for the future that there is this kind of like common practice across the whole of the UK because it is not helpful at all. Yeah. But like I say, we could talk about that for a long time, but back onto supervision. All right. So what would you say to someone who is in a position where they go, I can handle my job. I don't need to have supervision and it would just waste my time?
I would say, in what other area of your job do you not communicate with others, learn from others, take advice from others, seek out expertise. You don't, particularly working in schools, which is my main context, we're constantly doing that in terms of planning lessons, taking on new topics, pastoral work, working with parents. We're constantly looking outside. Safeguarding is the most important part of our work. It's the absolute priority. And I would say to them, try it once and see how that feels. And I think you'll be surprised. In my experience, people who've never had it before, when they have it the first time, and I'm sure you've had the same, they are taken aback by how helpful it is. And if I was in charge of the world, it would be mandatory.
It should be. And, you know, across certain areas of education, it is mandatory. So hopefully people do catch up. I do love it when at the moment we're working a lot with charities and actually their emphasis on wanting to support their staff and how supervision fits into that. That's a lovely little change I'm seeing recently, and I'm really enjoying it, actually, because actually going across different sectors is very, very interesting. But there seems to be a fundamental that everyone is trying to interrupt the potential for harm, and supervision is that, not just for the young people or the adults that you're working with or supporting, but also for yourself. And well-being doesn't get spoken about enough for those who work on the front line of safeguarding. Well, that brings us nicely to the end of today's episode. Thank you so much, Victoria, for joining me on this topic. I've been wanting to cover it for a very, very long time.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to hit the follow button so you don't miss another episode of Safeguarding Redefined.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Safeguarding Redefined. Remember, every voice matters. If you have a story to share or a question to ask, please let us know. To stay updated on the latest episodes and safeguarding news, be sure to subscribe to our podcast and follow us on LinkedIn or check out cornerstonesafeguarding.co.uk.